Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS. This is Ukraine War news update, second part thereof for the 5th of April 2024. This is a day of a lot of news. There's my video this morning was very long because there was a lot of analysis and news coming from strikes deep within Russia and news about oil refineries and sanctions and Russia being under pressure in all these different ways. And there's so much information about this war that's coming out, and I feel obliged to share that with you. And so some days like today is just a lot of content. You don't have to watch everything. It's here if you need it. Anyway, let's crack on with the military aid. I've got both sections, military aid and equipment, and the geopolitical section lined up here, but I think I'll only have time for military aid and split them off. Right, start with the US. The White House secretly persuaded Mike Johnson, the minority speaker of the House of Representatives for the Republican Party, to put the $60 billion bill to Kyiv up for a vote, according to Politico. According to administration officials, Biden's team has been in contact with the House Speaker's office about the Ukraine aid throughout the congressional recess. So we've had this Easter recess. There's been this talk that Mike Johnson is going to put it up as soon as he gets back, and then he has been threatened overtly by Marjorie Taylor Greene that there will be some kind of vacation, some kind of by that I mean vacating his seat so he loses his job if he goes ahead with any form of Ukraine aid. She's explicitly tied her move to vacate his seat to Ukraine aids. For some reason, Ukraine aid has become partisan, and I don't get it. But anyway, that's the situation. And unsurprisingly, Biden's administration has been pressuring, obviously, because they know it's the right thing to do and it's super freaking important. So they've been pressuring Mike Johnson to get that bill to the floor. The publication notes that while the president publicly pressed Republicans for passage of the package, he and his team refrained from aggressively attacking the politician himself. This is a really delicate situation. On the one hand, and this is the same for Ukraine, I've been thinking about this with regard to Zelensky. Zelensky knows that Mike Johnson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and indeed Trump are real challenges to Ukraine aid. And I can freely, like Jonathan MSP, I can freely go out and say, well, Mike Johnson's a douchebag and Marjorie Taylor Greene needs, I don't know, disappearing from politics, and Trump is a real threat to Ukrainian sovereignty and existential future, etc., etc. I can say that openly. Zelensky can't, because he knows that then they will entrench in their positions and he will not get that aid. And likewise, the Biden administration, as frustrated as they are with these people, cannot come out and attack them too explicitly, even though they must desperately want to. They would be wanting to say this on the news, in their different media outlets, and so on and so forth. They can't do that because then it becomes even more partisan. If they attack Mike Johnson, if they attack Marjorie Taylor Greene on Ukraine, if they attack Trump on Ukraine too explicitly, then this becomes an even more overtly partisan issue. It's such a delicate situation, and this is why we don't hear almost enough from the administration on this, because the more they complain about this, the more partisan it becomes, the less likely it is that the Republicans will actually do what's needed to be done. And that's horrible. So there must be an awful lot of people sitting in the White House, sitting in the Pentagon, sitting in the Department of Defense going, this is freaking insane. And yet sitting on their hands and zipping up their mouths, because they know the more they complain about it, the louder they shout, the more difficult it is in the long run to get that aid secured. And it's something of a paradox, really. Timothy Snyder here says, who's the historian that's deeply involved with Ukraine, says, I don't think Ukraine aid is going to pass without a discharge petition that allows a simple vote. In other words, like the bills aren't going to be put to the floor, he thinks, and the only chance is a discharge petition, the most prominent being the Democrat one that forwards the already passed Senate bill. And the problem with that one is that it also includes Israel aid, and Israel's becoming even more problematic as every day goes past. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, has just admitted that they killed the aid convoy by just thinking they thought someone had a gun in their hands and therefore hit them, and then hit every other vehicle. And then when people were moving, they hit them because they thought they were soldiers and they just wanted to make sure they were all dead. And of course, they were aid workers, and it's they're not doing themselves any favors every single day. Now, that's relevant to Ukraine because if you have a Ukraine aid bill that has Israel aid tied to it, then then Democrats particularly, but I would imagine probably some Republicans are getting jittery about aid to Israel, will not pass that bill because they do not want the US supporting what is an exceptionally right-wing Israeli government hammering civilians and indeed aid workers in Gaza. So the whole Israel situation is shifting in terms of public perception. We're seeing that in the UK. We're seeing that in the US. We're seeing that across the world. What might be interesting is looking at what Republican support for Israel does. This is aside from Ukraine. I'm just interested in whether you will get a movement away from overt support of Israel in terms of historically where the US has been, in terms of Judeo-Christian culture and how that's connected through Israel and Judaism, of course, and through the Holy Land to say the Judeo-Christian side of the Republican Party in the many Christians that are there, and so all that's wrapped up, and so well, manifests in support for Israel. But actually, I don't think that's justified morally and politically speaking, especially since Israel are actually militarily quite powerful, but are also just killing lots of civilians unnecessarily, I would wager. And so if you're going to have a discharge petition, there are two discharge petitions. The Republican one won't get through. Democrat one has a real chance of getting through, but the problem it has is that some 20 plus Democrats will not sign it because of Israel aid, and so you're going to need about 30 signatures from Republicans. We have one from Ken Buck, who then did a runner. I think you're going to need more. It starts getting interesting because there are rumors that there are more Republicans that are going to resign, which would put their majority of one in the House of Representatives down to not a majority. And then if you get a shift to having a majority speaker from the Democrats, everything changes. And it might be that people are looking at their own districts and thinking, I'm not going to get voted back in. I don't agree with the MAGA wing. And actually, I can go and get a better job somewhere else type thing. You have this in the UK at the moment where people are looking at the absolute hammering the Tory party are probably going to get at the next election. Or the new MRP, new like constituency by constituency surveys are coming out that's showing that the Tory party are going to get mauled. And if they do, there are backbenchers that are thinking, what do I do? Do I look for a job? Do I give up now? Now, in the UK, it's unlikely they're going to give up because actually they would give up 6 months they'd probably give up like 50,000 in wages to do that. So they'll probably hang on and just like not really run or quit just before the election or something. I don't know. Interesting conversations going on with regard to that. But in the US, I think all it takes really is one or two Republicans to follow what Gallagher and Ken Buck have done and resign, and you've got a very different political landscape going on there. Anyway, Timothy Snyder continues. I do think that Johnson is doing now is specifically designed to prevent the discharge petition from getting enough votes. By bringing up Ukraine, he is giving members of Congress an excuse not to sign the discharge petition. For the last 6 months, all of Johnson's ploys had the same logic: make a promise, create some hope, generate excuses for European and executive branch inaction, weaken Ukraine, advance Russian genocide. Press coverage dwells now on hope rather than recalling that Johnson's entire record thus far as Speaker involves dishonest gambits to prevent Ukraine funding. If you're a member of Congress, please sign the discharge petition. So I think this is what many in my comments thread have been saying, which is don't trust Johnson. He's only got one thing on his mind at the moment, which is actually not doing what he says he's going to do on Ukraine aid. and lots of people are just simply unbelieving of what Mike Johnson actually says. Timothy Snyder here is one of those people. Now, Jankiev points out this Politico article saying that the US Congress has not only destroyed American defense credibility among its long-standing allies, but is now destroying its own defense industry as well, something I've talked about a long time. So as the EU and European allies of Ukraine, but European nations are having to pick up their defense spending to get in line with NATO as they become as they fulfill those NATO criteria, they become more independent of the US and more security independent, less dependent on the US. And as a result, they're pouring that money they're spending on defense, not America's way. They will do to some extent, but because of the EU regulations and whatnot that are coming through at the moment, they will have to spend more and more within the EU. So it is looking like, while America gets what some people have been wishing, which is the EU to stand on its own feet more and be more independent of the US and spend more on their defense, they will spend it in the EU. And that means Europe, as Politico says here, is starting to wean its war machine off US weapons. And that's the downside for the US, is that economically speaking, their own defense industry, their own defense sector will suffer comparatively. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, following meetings at the NATO headquarters, so there are lots of NATO meetings going on at the moment, said that the US and allies intend to redouble their efforts to find resources that Ukraine needs. There's an exclamation mark there because, of course, he can talk about the US redoubling efforts, or everyone needing to redouble their efforts to find Ukraine equipment, but of course, $60 billion plus has been stuck in US Congress for 6 months. So there's like, he's got to speak out of both sides of his mouth. He's got to kind of like, yeah, everyone should find more stuff, including us. And we've got all this stuff, but it is waiting in a warehouse. Anyway, everyone else should find more stuff. As for equipment stocks, supplies, yes, one of the things we talked about today, look carefully at what can be provided. We know the needs: air defense equipment, artillery, ammunition. So I think coming out from what I've heard today, that everyone, including the United States, is going to redouble efforts, and if necessary, redouble efforts to find resources that Ukraine continues to need, he said. Norway, interestingly, does not potentially rule out the introduction of troops into Ukraine. So rather, like Macron, it's been stated by the Foreign Ministry of Norway, Foreign Minister Espen Barth Eide, that, quote, at the moment we are not planning to send troops. I don't think many countries have such plans. But on the other hand, in the very long term, I don't think we should rule anything out in principle. That's really good news and aligns with a growing number of nations rallying behind what Emmanuel Macron has said. Quote, and this is coming from Jakub Landowski, the Czech ambassador to NATO. Quote, I am convinced that the ammunition from the Czech Republic will arrive on time, and I estimate the date at the beginning of June. Ukraine is not in a good situation at the moment. So this is the understanding that Ukraine needs artillery ammunition, that the Czech initiative has found that ammunition, that they have been paid for some of it, but there's still this big gap of actual money arriving in the coffers to get the rest of that sorted. But here is a claim from a Czech ambassador that it will start arriving in June. And added to that, Czechia has committed to contributing tens of millions of euros to the ammunition initiative to address the critical shortage of ammo in Ukraine. So I presume that's some more money being given to the initiative by Czechia themselves. Now, the German foreign minister says Berlin, and this is possibly the biggest bit of news in the military aid segment, German foreign minister says Berlin will initiate search for more air defense for Ukraine. So this is, I presume, Annalena Baerbock, the foreign minister, who is really doing well out of the war. It sounds horrible, but she is showing herself to be a very strong proponent of aid for Ukraine and being showing herself to be a strong diplomat and politician. where Olaf Scholz is possibly not doing so well. She's of the Green Party. Berlin in the coalition. Berlin will call on allies worldwide to examine their air defense capabilities and, quote, to provide whatever we all can to Ukraine, Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock said after NATO-Ukraine Council meeting in Brussels yesterday. Now, Germany has launched the objective to retrieve air defense systems worldwide, in particular MIM-104 Patriot systems, in order to strengthen Ukrainian air defense systems. This has been stated by Dmytro Kuleba, the Ukrainian foreign minister. In March 2024, says German aid to Ukraine, Germany has pledged to deliver further Patriot missiles from Bundeswehr stocks to Ukraine. So that's this month. That's brilliant. Based on 3 prior deliveries, I expect around 50 to 100 missiles to be delivered by Germany in the upcoming weeks. That's hugely important. So on the back of Germany spearheading this search for spare, particularly Patriot systems to go to Ukraine and other air defense needs, they are themselves giving missiles. Really super important, this move to get Patriot, particularly Patriot systems. It's exactly what Ukraine needs. And then German aid to Ukraine adds, I can't prove it for sure, that this is being Ukraine related, since the company doesn't want to answer questions related to Ukraine. But it's likely that some German delivered Mercedes-Benz Zetros get state-of-the-art anti-drone equipment upgrades. Germany has delivered a total of 250 Zetros to Ukraine in a basic logistic variant in different configurations like 4x4, 6x6, so 4 wheels, 6 wheels, 8 wheels, and so on. The color scheme and non-armored version would fit. The German company Aronia AG is known to have Ukrainian soldiers trained in drone detection since 2022 after being contracted by the German government. So this, again, there are so many things going on either under the radar, look, we don't even know about, or that we kind of know about being announced, but we don't really know the details, such as training on anti-drone capabilities, the adaptation of certain vehicles to have anti-drone capabilities. I mean, we, as in myself, Professor Gerdes, Greg Terry, Rick the Ukrainian, we're doing fundraising for these 3, now 4 Land Rover Snatch armoured medevac vehicles so that people can get their wounded out of these war zones. Some of the units that Greg's been talking to basically just use anything or nothing because they can't, because they have nothing to get their injured out. And so these Land Rover Snatches are going to be a real improvement, and they have Kevlar and all sorts of armor protection, but they also will be fitted with the best, according to Greg, the best drone anti-drone technology as well. And these are the sorts of things that the Ukrainians definitely need, given the prevalence of drones in the war zone that I talked about so much this morning in the first video. Right, Lithuania will purchase 3,000 Lithuanian drones for Ukraine and will also allocate 15 million euros for rehabilitation programs for wounded Ukrainian soldiers. This was agreed upon by Prime Minister of Ukraine Shmyhal and the Prime Minister of Lithuania during their visit to Vilnius. So Shmyhal was in Lithuania yesterday. Also, Lithuania provides 35 million euros for the Czech initiative for the purchase of artillery ammunition and will allocate another 5 million euros for education and 12 million euros for assistance to veterans, reconstruction of schools and kindergartens, arrangement of shelters. So Lithuania really stepping up. They're a small country and they're giving, well, it turns out 1.5% of their GDP to military aid for Ukraine. I don't know if that includes all the other stuff they're giving. That if that's just military aid, and then we're talking about reconstruction, rehabilitation, all this other stuff, then that's absolutely incredible. Someone else says, believe funny, in 2023, the Czech Republic spent just 1.53% of GDP on its own defense. Lithuania spends 1.5% of GDP on the defense of a friendly state and 2.75% on its own defense-based Baltics. So the Baltics are doing an incredible job. And indeed, I think it was a Lithuanian report that said, look, if we just give, I forget what it was exactly, but if we spend this percent, all of us in NATO or allied nations, spend this percent of our GDP together on supporting Ukraine, Ukraine will have no problems winning the war. And they are leading by example. The Latvian Prime Minister is informed, so just next door, that a new military aid package for Ukraine is planned for April. From the reserves of the National Armed Forces. It's planning to donate material and technical means, including armaments and ammunition worth 22.2 million euros. This support package will primarily include ammunition, explosives, and weapons, as well as transport and personal and support equipment. Latvia will also send the first drones worth 1 million euros to Ukraine within the framework of the drone coalition. So if you remember, Latvia, UK, and now other countries, I think Canada's come on board with the drone coalition. Latvia plans to allocate at least 10 million euros of drones in 2024. For the purchase of drones. So Latvia, here we go, sending the first batch of those drones. And actually here it says a total of 9 million. Previously it said, on the other one it said 10 million. So Latvia really stepping up to help Ukraine. And here we have Ukrainian manufacturers themselves will deliver armed drones this year that can fly up to 2,500 kilometers, according to Bild, the German tabloid newspaper. Approximately 80 Russian military bases, include Olenya, where Russians stationed strategic Tupolev bombers, are then within reach. Actually, there's been a map. Oh, no, it's not here. I'll just see if I can find it. There's a map that's been released of how far the Ukrainians can reach into Russia now, and it is just recently out. Oh, lots of new news coming up that I have to read through. Goodness me. It looks like, there it is. So there's the map. And this is probably from the Bild article. Yes, it is. So you can see that 1,300 kilometers, which is what we know they definitely already can do, because they did it the other day and hit that oil refinery and drone manufacturing plant in Tatarstan. But then you've got 2,500 kilometers. And then we've also got 3,300 kilometers range there, that larger circle. Well, this is the news that the range of Ukraine's new long-range kamikaze drone, the E-300 Enterprise, can fly over 3,100 kilometers into Russia, carrying a 300-kilogram warhead. Holy cow. Its range can reach 6.1 million square kilometers and strike 77 of Russia's 99 largest air bases. Goodness me, the fact they got 100 air bases is quite incredible, including most military factories and oil refineries. This is a massive warning for Russia, really. Absolutely incredible. So Ukraine's drone capability is evolving, and this will have a significant effect on the outcome of this war and what the Ukrainians can do. Now, of course, we'll have to wait to see what the truth of the attacks last night on Morozovsk airbase was. Fighter bomber. It's quite a reliable Russian. He's actually a Russian pilot. Telegram source has said that actually nothing was destroyed. They managed to spread out their planes in time, but said that today during demining there was an explosion and some people have died. I mean, well, there were casualties. I don't know. That sounds a little bit convenient to me. I don't know. We'll see whether it was successful, that strike last night. Anyway, as far as military aid is concerned and equipment, hopefully that's given you a good synopsis of kind of what's going on in that sector. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll get back to you soon with the geopolitical video.